I would like to spend a little bit of time talking about what we're doing and why we're doing it in this class. Kind of give you a sense for how we've laid out these 10 weeks. You may remember in the last lecture we talked about the big skill goals, sort of the meta goals for this course, designing clear presentations and delivering them in an engaging way. I want to go through these and talk about how we've sort of broken these down to smaller goals and then how we've organized the class time around these goals. So in terms of more specific course objectives, by the end of our time together, you should be able to design and deliver basic presentations concisely. We'll see this in the impromptu speech. You should be able to design and deliver informative presentations clearly. Design and deliver complex arguments persuasively. Beyond that, sort of a general goal that will advance through all the assignments are working on the ability to speak confidently with appropriate rate, projection, movement, and vocal variety. And then finally, and just as importantly, being able to evaluate and critique speeches insightfully. The great thing about that is once you really sort of start getting better at speech criticism, then all the speeches that you watch become resources that you can use for your own improvement. So I've organized a class around the assignments, and that's because I look at these assignments as buckets for skills. I'm interested in very specific skills, and the way I can bring those together and talk about them as a coherent whole is through the assignments. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about each one of the assignments. So we're going to start off next week with the impromptu speech. The impromptu speech is a short 3 to 6 minute 2-point speech. The goal here is to get you to the point where you can quickly organize a speech that sounds good. In working on this assignment, we're really going to be trying to master some of the basics of good speaking. Can you arrange something quickly, talk about the evidence well, and make it easy for an audience to follow along with? So that's the impromptu speech. Once we've got that taken care of, we'll move on to the informative speech. Now, the informative speech is a little bit longer. It's a 5 to 10 minute speech that educates an audience on a topic. So here, one of the challenges is being able to explain complex details, complex evidence in a way that is accessible for an audience. So you might think of these informative speeches in terms of TED Talks or Ignite Talks, and these can range from you telling us something about your hometown to explaining a scientific theory. Okay, so just really being able to explain data to an audience of listeners. And then finally, we'll end on the persuasive speech. Again, this is a 5 to 10 minute speech that attempts to shift audience opinion or raise audience awareness on a topic. So here, we want to be able to motivate the audience through clear arguments. We're really trying to pull together claims and evidence in a way that is persuasive. Now, these assignments structure our time. So if you take a look at the 10 weeks that we've got together, this first week is devoted to course overview and key terms. We're in that process right now. Then on week 2, we start off with preparing impromptu speeches and then delivering impromptu speeches. Then we move on to basics of informative speaking, preparing an informative speech, delivering an informative speech. So too again with the persuasive, and then we have a final week where we reflect on all of this. You'll notice each one of these, we kind of move through a very similar pattern. So we'll start off by developing the speech's core idea, then we'll think about sort of arrangement and phrasing of those ideas in a way that's going to work. Then we'll spend a fair bit of time talking about delivery in general, specifically on that type of speech. And then we'll move on with that assignment. Now, for each one of these assignments, you can record and post a version of this speech online to receive peer feedback. That is totally up to you. I'll talk more to that at the end of this week. You can record a video of that and receive peer feedback. You don't have to. And in fact, I tried to create these assignments so that even if you didn't post the video, you could use those 3 weeks devoted to the informative speech to prepare your next business presentation. Okay? That's the idea. You can take all of that, but use it to prepare that business presentation and then do that business presentation much better than you would have without that background, without that opportunity to reflect. So I do want you to record and post speeches online if it works for your goals for this course. If you're going to be doing presentations outside of this course and that's where you want to put your time and attention, I think that's just great. And that's what I want this course to be available to bend in that way. This should be a resource. But once again, so if we look at these 3 assignments, the impromptu, the informative, and the persuasive, these assignments move, that's a deliberate order because we're moving from more simple to more complex. We scale up with each speech. So we'll start off with the impromptu speech. Great, usable model. Man, you can use this almost anywhere. But it has fewer moving pieces. So we'll really work on the impromptu speech, and then once we've got that taken care of, we'll move on to the informative speech, which taps a lot of those skills that we worked on in the impromptu, but has more moving pieces. It's a little bit more complex. Then we'll take that and we'll move it on into the persuasive speech. We're using a lot of those informative skills, but persuasive speech is, more complex, doing different things. In educational theory, we might call this scaffolding, right? We're building up to a point, and then you're performing something, we build up to the next point. So with this sort of orientation completed, we've talked about speaking situations, we've talked about general goals for the course, and we've talked about specific goals for the course and the assignments. So that's sort of the orientation portion of this week. In the next lecture, I want to start talking about some key ideas, some key definitions. And we're going to start with the much maligned and often understood key term, rhetoric.